All right, all right. Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, to all the moms out there, happy Mother's Day. Probably one of the most difficult and hardest jobs out there is being a mom. So happy Mother's Day to all the mommies. We really do appreciate you. I already spoke to my mom earlier today. I hope you spoke to yours. Did you call your mom today? Did you visit your mom today? Don't forget about the moms. But yeah, shout out to all the moms for Mother's Day. Like I said, probably the most difficult job, the most difficult job out there. So I hope you guys got to have some fun and good time with your mommy. And we're going to have some good time today because it's Sunday fun day. You know, we like to cut up a little bit on Sundays. So welcome back, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you are new, I do want to let you know that we are on YouTube, we're on Twitter, and we're also on Rumble. Well, X. I keep saying Twitter, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So if you're watching us on one of those platforms, what's up? What is up? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to get into today. Excuse my voice. I do still have a bit of a cold, but it has been a very interesting weekend. A very interesting weekend for news, and we're going to get into all of that. First and foremost, let's give some shout outs to people in the chat, ladies and gents. Shout out to Just Me says, hi, Sabby. What's going on? Greetings. I am upside down. Attack, calling a duck a duck. I call it accurate. We'll get into it. Greetings. Rich says, happy Mother's Day, everyone. Shout out to Ronnie. Hello, Sabby. Happy Mother's Day. See, everybody remembers the moms. Everybody remembers. Greetings. All one same says 1870 Julia Ward called for a Mother's Day for peace, dedicated to the celebration of peace and the eradication of war. Remember your mothers today and give thanks. Yeah. Greetings, Delphinia says, thank you, Sabby, and your team for useful updates on beautiful Mother's Day. Stay strong as you share knowledge to souls in God's universe. Thank you. Welcome, Lovely says, MTG should be rejected because she's a snake who has not changed, but as usual, Democrats allow themselves to be easily bamboozled by these people, and that is why they get screwed over and lose. I would say that's not why they lose. I would say that's not why they lose, but we can get into it. Greetings, Randy. I'll be patiently waiting, my dear. Little Sabby and revolutionary blackout comrades. What's up, Randy? Shout out to Cloudness says, happy Mother's Day, ladies. Have a wonderful day and salute Sabby Sabs and all the Knicks fans. Sorry, not sorry, Boston B1 fam. Yeah, we got our butts kicked. Celtics are out. We got our butts kicked. It happened when I was traveling, actually. And I was just like, I can't even believe it should have never even gotten to 7 games. But I have my own suspicions about that. Like, why it always ends up that way when we're so many games ahead. And, Jason Tatum not being in, that obviously, hurt us somewhat. But I don't know, you guys. I've seen this game before. I've seen it before. Greetings, Blockbuster says hi. Shout out to CBC Voter says happy Sunday, Sabby and Eric T. Red. Greetings, New York Varsity says watching AOC go after someone who out left her in the left for a chick. She's got some set of balls. Andrew Dice Clay. We will get into all of it, fam, all of it. So welcome and shout out to everyone. I do want to go ahead and address this really quick. Kinman, oh, thank you. Kinman said, and the Oscar goes to Sabrina Salvati for her documentary, Remove Black Erasure in Boston. I'm not on that level, but I will say I'm very happy that we have been accepted to the Roxbury International Film Festival. So I'm looking forward to that. And it'll be my first one. So it'll be a new experience for me. Definitely new experience. Okie dokie, ladies and gents. If you haven't had a chance to do so, do me a solid and smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share just like a Care Bear. Let's keep it moving and grooving. Tonight's theme is crash and burn because I feel like we're in that moment at this point in time where people are just crashing and burning. People are crashing and burning. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to patrons, and then we'll get into that thumbnail there, ladies and gents. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate you, fam. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories here. We have the ultimate. We have the Sabinators. Don't forget about the Sabsters. They're pretty cool too. Yeah, buddy. And last but not least, oh, we have the Sabbies, sorry. And then last but not least, we have members. All of their names are listed here, and you can see their names scrolling across the bottom of the ticker throughout the live stream. Thank you guys. Thank you and welcome. Welcome back, as we like to say. Welcome back. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this thumbnail. Again, tonight's theme is crash and burn. Crash and burn. I think that was a song also by, there was this band back in the day called Savage Garden. I don't know if everybody's ever heard of them, but they had some pretty cool songs, and they had one called Crash and Burn, which I thought was pretty cool. Okay, tonight we are discussing, oh my God, AOC attack on Marjorie Taylor Greene seems to have backfired. There are a number of leftists that are actually calling out AOC. They're coming after her for the statement that she made. But I do want to say this because I'm actually combining this with something else, that story in particular, because when I talk about this story, this is not about AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene, because we're also going to add the Chris Smalls element to this, activist and Amazon organizer Chris Smalls. This is about a cult of personality. That's essentially what this is about. I can replace the people here. I can replace AOC. I can replace Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I can put different people in that thumbnail. And I still would see the same type of energy that I saw online coming from people, because at the end of the day, people, they attach themselves to personalities. And what I'm starting to see, and I'm sending the warning right now, what I'm starting to see is a cult of personality around certain people. And it seems as though that if you're one of those people, there is nothing you can say or do that, for people who are part of that cult of personality, they will never hold you accountable. They will never say that you're responsible for anything. They will never criticize you, because they're not necessarily in love with the positions. They're more so in love with the personality. And that's what we're going to get into tonight. So I have a lot to say about that particular story. We're also going to discuss the Iran war update. Iran has shut down the U.S. demands, and they have issued a new set of demands, which Donald Trump does not like. We're also going to get into this report of that F-35, which has disappeared over Oman. We'll get into that as well. We're also going to discuss, speaking of cult of personality, Nick Fuentes is really crashing out. Nick Fuentes is going after Dan Bilzerian, who is running against Randy Fine. Randy Fine, a big-time Zionist in Congress, needs to go. I think everybody that I know, for the most part, they want Randy Fine out of Congress. And Nick Fuentes, it has gone on this tirade to say that Dan Bilzerian apparently wanted to assassinate people. We're going to get into all of that and what is really going on there, folks. We're also going to discuss, it is Sunday Fun Day, so we're going to have a fun story, and that is the Druski story. Druski has made another skit, which is hilarious but very true, and people in Hollywood are not liking the fact that Druski decided to call this out. But someone, he's saying it. He's not the first to say it. I'll get to some of the other people who have called this out as well, and we're going to get into all of that. And last but not least, there is an interesting update with Jeffrey Epstein. His brother is speaking out yet again, and we are going to hear what is happening to some of these inmates in the same facility as Ghislaine Maxwell. They are speaking out for the first time on record, saying that they are being threatened and that they have been punished. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This just goes to show you the immense amount of power that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had. So we're going to get into all of that, ladies and gents. So if you haven't done so, do me a solid and smash that like button, and we'll go ahead and dive right in. Again, the theme tonight is crash and burn. And we have to start off with Iran because Donald Trump is crashing and burning at this point in time. A couple of days ago, Donald Trump basically gave this ultimatum to Iran, and he said you had 48 hours to agree to our terms, to agree to the terms that the U.S. is demanding of them. The 48 hours kind of came and went, and Iran was just kind of like, whatever. We will take our time. We will take our time. In that span of time, a number of things have happened. So the first attack, I want to go ahead and get into this one. The U.S. did strike 2 Iranian oil tankers. So this was during that time where Donald Trump was telling them, okay, you got 48 hours, and they were exchanging fire back and forth. Let's get started with this one first.
In the Persian Gulf, the story remains one of creeping escalation in tensions between the United States and Iran, which both continue to test the claimed and fragile ceasefire. After the exchange of fire earlier in the week, which saw Iran fire on 2 US destroyers and the US hit targets in Iran, there were fresh exchanges on Friday. The Pentagon said a US fighter jet fired precise munitions at 2 unladen oil tankers attempting to pull into an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman.
So at that time, when this was first said, some people said it was a rumor and it wasn't confirmed, but this is confirmed that the U.S. did strike 2 of those Iranian oil tankers.
In return, there were more attacks by Iran on one of the United States' closest allies in the Gulf, the United Arab Emirates. It faced a new round of missile warnings as it intercepted 2 ballistic missiles and 3 drones fired by Iran, which still left 3 people injured. In the war of words between Washington and Tehran, however, it was a different story. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio was still saying he expected Iran's reply to the US peace proposal within 24 hours.
We should know something today. I mean, we're expecting a response from them. We'll see what the response entails. The hope is it's something that it can put us into a serious process of negotiation.
And Iranian TV was reporting that Tehran is reviewing the American proposal, though it continues to give no sense of urgency about tabling its response. Iran's foreign minister effectively accused the United States of deliberately sabotaging the peace process whenever a deal was close, saying Washington repeatedly abandons diplomacy for unwise adventurism by turning to military action whenever a political solution is possible.
Okay, so those 2 attacks did happen and they were exchanging fire there back and forth. But something else has also happened. I want to bring in this part here. So again, the U.S. attacked that oil tanker. Iran did come back and they did attack the U.S. Navy. That was the missile fire that she was talking about there also. Again, the U.S. didn't want to admit this, but the U.S. Navy came under missile fire after the U.S. attack on Iranian oil tanker. So this is coming from Iran. Again, like I said, the U.S. doesn't want to admit it, but it says here that U.S. military naval units operating in the Strait of Hormuz, they came under Iranian missile fire following an attack by the U.S. military on an Iranian oil tanker. U.S. military vessels were forced to retreat after sustaining damage from the Iranian missile. So this part is, I think, the most damning, right? And Donald Trump and Marco Rubio do not want to admit to this, but yes, the U.S. Navy had to retreat. So once again, we're starting to see, or the U.S. is really waking up to the fact of just how powerful Iran is and their weapons are. And Donald Trump really bit off more than he could chew by following the lead of Benjamin Netanyahu. So you guys see what's happening here. They had to retreat. CENTCOM doesn't want to tell you this. Donald Trump doesn't want to tell you this. If you only listen to Donald Trump, if you only watch corporate media, you would be under the impression that the U.S. is doing phenomenal over there in the Middle East, in the Strait of Hormuz. You would be under the impression that Iran has their firepower, for the most part, has been depleted. Their Navy is done. And this is why it's important to seek out other sources. So they don't want to admit when the U.S. is getting hit. Meanwhile, Iran is admitting both of it. So I want you guys to see what Marco Rubio just said here when he says, well, we got to shoot back at them because they fired it. Listen to this.
Well, yes, but the point is, if there's not much seizing in the firing, because we
Well, you should ask that of the Iranians. Don't ask me. We didn't fire. They fired on us. My point is, if you fire at a U.S. Navy ship What are we supposed to do? Say, oh, there's a ceasefire, we're not going to shoot down your drone. That's a stupid question. That's a stupid position to take. Of course we fired back at them. They were shooting at us. That's what I would expect to do. Only stupid countries don't shoot back when you're shot at, and we're not a stupid country.
Do you expect that there, or have you conveyed any?
So just to interrupt here for just a second, who attacked who first? Didn't the U.S. attack Iran first? The U.S. and Israel attacked them first. And now Marco Rubio was trying to make it seem like the United States is the victim here. No, you attacked them first and they knocked you the fuck out. And now you're trying to make it seem like, oh God, they're coming after us for no reason. That's wild.
Red lines to Iran where, you know, if the ceasefire or whatever you call it, if they cross...
Well, the red line is clear. If they threaten Americans, they're going to get blown up. I mean, that's how much clearer can you be than that? If you are a missile launching guy, whatever they call that job, and you're sitting there and you fire a missile at...
This is how uneducated he is. You guys see this? If you are a missile launching guy, this is the Secretary of State. This is the guy that they expect to handle foreign policy with Cuba, which he basically just wants to take over Cuba, by the way. He's been itching to do that for a long time. He's been itching to do it. But do you see how uneducated he sounds here?
The United States, and we saw you fire it, we're going to hit you. Of course we are. Who doesn't do that? Unless you want to get your ship sunk. I mean, we're not going to let our ships get sunk by the Iranians with their...
But they have been.
You know, their drones that they're firing. You know, they don't have a navy anymore. But they bring out these little Boston whaler fishing boats and they try to swarm you. We're going to blow those boats up if they're coming towards our boats. I don't know if that's a red line, but I hope they know it is by now. So if I were one of these Iranians on a fast boat and they tell you, hey, your mission is to go after a U.S. destroyer, you're probably not going to survive. I think that's a red line.
No wonder people laugh at the United States. Humiliating there. They continue to tell you Iran has no navy. Iran is losing most of their weapons, but somehow you just keep getting hit with no weapons. It's laughable. But a report came through Sunday morning that this is one that is very interesting. A lot of them are not talking about this as well. Apparently, a U.S. F-35 is missing. So we've talked about these fighter jets before, the U.S. F-35s. It declares mid-air emergency over the Oman Gulf, goes off the radar. Iran claims it struck the jet. Donald Trump isn't saying this at all. If you look on X, if you were to look on Truth Social to see his crazy ass post, he's not saying anything about this. Now, this was announced Sunday morning. The aircraft, identified as Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II, transmitted squawk code 7700, a standard signal used to indicate an onboard emergency or distress situation. So that is only something you would use if like you're in trouble. So a U.S. fighter jet on Sunday declared an emergency while flying over the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman. The aircraft, identified as Lockheed Martin F-35, and that standard signal I just told you about there, indicating an onboard emergency or distress situation. The aircraft was tracked heading towards the UAE airspace. According to flight radar data, the tracking data showed the jet flying over the Gulf of Oman and Oman. The departure point, destination, and further details of the incident have not been disclosed. So you guys, you can track this yourself if you look at like these flight maps, and you can actually see if there's planes flying over that area or not. And then you'll see it here. Look, F-35 Lightning 7700. That's the distress code. And apparently this jet went off the radar. Now, Iran is saying that they struck this fighter jet, but the U.S. and CENTCOM, of course, are not confirming that. They've been trying to hide just how much damage has been done. After being tracked near the UAE, the aircraft's transponder went dark, which is common during military operations or after a safe landing. Iranian state media claimed the jet was shot down or hit by the IRGC forces. However, no wreckage photos or independent confirmation have been shared. Similar claims have been made during past tensions involving Iran, have often been exaggerated or later linked to aircraft that were damaged but recovered. So this is one we're still waiting to find out about. But what happened to that jet? And again, using that emergency signal. So that's something to pay close attention to there. Then there's something else that is wild and crazy. Donald Trump is also not telling you, guys, Iran has been making agreements and meetings with leaders of other countries. I saw it on this clip here. This clip is from Midas Touch. I want you guys to see this because this is also, I feel like, not being talked about by a lot of people. It's not just Iran talking to Russia. Iran is talking to a lot of people, working out deals behind the scenes. Listen to this.
Let's just go through, though, the utter embarrassment and shame Donald Trump is experiencing. Iran announces that its foreign minister, Araghchi, held bilateral communications with the foreign minister of the UK. Foreign Minister Araghchi announced bilateral negotiations and communications with Turkey.
UK, Turkey,
Bilateral communications and negotiations with Japan, bilateral negotiations and communication with Saudi Arabia's foreign minister, bilateral communications and negotiation with Spain's foreign minister, bilateral communications and negotiations with Poland's foreign minister, with the foreign minister of Switzerland, with the foreign minister of India, with the foreign minister of Italy, with the foreign minister of South Korea, with the foreign minister of Brazil, with the foreign minister of Turkmenistan, with the foreign minister of Pakistan, with the foreign minister of Kenya, with the foreign. Do you get the point? Do you get the point? And by the way, this is public stuff. They're not hiding it. One by one, foreign ministers of nations that were once allied with the United States are lining up to speak with Foreign Minister Araghchi.
That's right, guys. So Western media would have you believe that Iran is isolated. They're not. Or they would have you believe that Iran only has support from Russia. But that's not what's happening here. And this is what I said before, that the US continues to put itself in a position of isolation. We're the ones that are going to be left on an island. All these other countries are going to work together towards a multipolar world. Let's fast forward 10, 15 years from now. I know sometimes it's hard to think that far ahead, but let's fast forward 10 to 15 years from now. I see that becoming more of a reality. I see more countries joining BRICS. I see more countries choosing to make their own decisions and say, you know what? I don't think I really want to follow the lead of the United States anymore. What about what's best for me? I think this is going to become more of an issue as time goes by, especially with the economic situation, because the reality is, look, the oil prices is an issue. And these leaders, they're hearing complaints from people in their countries too, just like we're complaining here in the United States. And I think it's only inevitable at some point, these other leaders are going to say, Macron has already said this a couple of times, but these other leaders are going to say, wait a minute now. What about what's in it for us? What about what's good for the people in our country? Should we continue to allow ourselves to get dragged into these conflicts that are implemented by the United States and Israel, or should we take care of our own and work together towards a multipolar world? I think this is going to become more of a thing. I really do. Then we get to this part here, because Iran, they rejected the proposal from the US. Is not surprising to me, probably not surprising to you. And they offered a counter proposal. Iran's final proposal to the US to end the war, removing all sanctions, ending the naval blockade, unfreezing Iranian funds, full control of the Strait of Hormuz, and a ceasefire in Lebanon. So just to let you know, they said here at the time they thought it would be rejected. Just to let you know, Donald Trump has already rejected it. He said that he thinks that this is ridiculous. It's not. It's realistic. And Iran is not backing down. They're not backing down. So this part here, I think, is really important. This was on Press TV. And this is Greg Simmons. Greg Simmons is explaining how the U.S. has continued to make these ridiculous mistakes. Listen to this.
I think the Iranians are far more adept at learning through operational experience than the Americans, because they still really don't know what they're doing. and their ability to learn is seemingly almost zero because they keep on making the same stupid mistakes. Iran doesn't make the same mistakes. If a mistake is made, the next time a similar event occurs, the mistake is not made.
So he's saying that the US continues to make the same mistakes and that Iran is basically learning. If Iran makes a mistake, they learn from that mistake and then they try another strategy. Whereas with the US, our government is continuing the same thing over and over. They keep trying to do the same type of attacks and all this type of stuff. And they keep trying to find a way to pressure Iran, and they see that's not working. But he has a really good point here when he says that Iran, they've learned how to adjust, right? So they try one strategy, it doesn't work. They learn how to adjust to get something that does work in their favor.
Perhaps there are new ones, but what we see, for example, with this most recent attempt to run the Strait of Hormuz by those American vessels, naval vessels, okay, they weren't sunk, but I think the Iranian Navy has learned a lot of lessons, and if they're stupid enough to try it again, the results might be much more catastrophic. So you can see this, as noted with the True Promise waves. Each one is a learning experience.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how Iran is looking at it, as a learning experience. And they're like, okay, well, we tried that. That didn't work. We'll try something differently. Meanwhile, the US government is doing the same things over and over and expecting different results, right? Check this out as well. They've already spotted Mossad links in Iran. Iran's intelligence ministry says it dismantled 2 Mossad-linked terrorist cells in West Azerbaijan, Kerman, and Alborz provinces. 1 operative killed. Weapons, drones, and Starlink devices were seized. Another operative smuggling military intel also arrested at the northern border. So this is just an example of some of the ammunitions that were discovered. So they continue to find Mossad, like they have Mossad cells that, you know, embed themselves in Iran, and Iran is continuing to find them and to basically take their weapons away from them. And we've seen this before. I told you like how they basically infiltrated the protest and all that type of stuff and went after them and said, oh, look, it's Iran. They're the ones killing their own people. But Iran continues to find these cells, these Mossad cells, right? So Trump has been very clear about this, like wanting to bring people into Iran, arm people, arm the Kurds to go in and to cause an uprising internally. Netanyahu, obviously, they've done this before. And Netanyahu was just recently on 60 Minutes, and I want you to hear what he just said about the Iran war.
Is the war with Iran over? And if it isn't, who will decide when it is?
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium that has to be taken out of Iran. There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled.
Is he sick? Take a good look at Netanyahu in this interview. This is something I noticed. Look at his face very closely. He looks like he's either sick or tired or something, but he does not look like he's in his best health. Christine said he looks different. He does. You think it's the makeup or something? I don't know.
There's still proxies that Iran supports. There are ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
How do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran?
You go in and you take it out.
With what? Special forces from Israel, special forces from the United States?
Well, I'm not going to talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you...
Everybody hearing what he's saying? The war, according to him, the Iran war is not over. It will be over when he says it's over. And then also he's talking about sending in troops on the ground. So let's go back to that part real quick. Like, who's going to go in?
Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you go in and you take it out, why not? That's the best way.
If it's so easy to do that, then why haven't they done that? Because they know it's not easy to do that. So here he is lying again.
What if there isn't an agreement? Can it be taken out by force?
Well, you're going to ask me these questions. I'm going to dodge them because I'm not going to talk about our military possibilities, plans, or anything of the kind.
And I'm just trying to get at how long is it going to take to achieve that aim?
I'm not going to give a timetable to it, but I'm going to say that's a terrifically important mission.
So you see, what he is basically telling you is regardless of what Donald Trump says, he is the one that decides when the war in Iran is over. So this is a crash and burn for the US government. It's bad. And it's not even just like a little bit bad. Like this is crash and burn. There's no way out of this unless unless the US government says, okay, Iran, we agree to your terms. That's the only way out. Unless someone would be dumb enough to use a nuclear weapon, which honestly, with those two, you never know. With Netanyahu and Donald Trump, you never know. And then I would say that would be the end of the West. We would never be viewed. We're already not favorably viewed anyway in a lot of countries. We would never be favorably. That would be the end. If someone were to use a nuclear weapon, if he uses it or the US were to use it, then all hell breaks loose because that gives permission for North Korea to use a nuclear weapon, for Russia to use a nuclear weapon. That would be absolute disaster. But I believe that those two are crazy enough to do it. So it's just crash and burn, crash and burn. Iran has the upper hand. They have from the beginning. And this is just making things even crazier at this point in time. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. All right. Multi says they're pushing AOC for 2028. Yeah, they are. But she said that she wasn't looking in that direction just yet. But yeah, they are pushing her for 2028. Thank you for the super chat, Libertarian Social Democrat. Sabby, I spoke with Aaron and Dan is messing up this race and Dan history and rhetoric is too toxic, which gives leverage to fine. Dan is carpetbagger. I'm going to get into all of it because this whole thing to me just feels weird. The whole thing to me feels weird. I did not know, but apparently Don Cornelius died. I did not know that. R.I.P. Don Cornelius from the classic. Thank you. I'll have to look at that. Shout out to Marlon, who's been a member for 15 months. Thanks to Rubio, we know Iranians are smarter than the Trump administration. Oh, boy. Thank you, Mink. Sabby, doing great job. Thank you. Thank you, Lady Studio. In Megadeth, Take No Prisoners, it reads, war is a playground for the demented, a haven for those who walk this world bereft of heart and soul. Okay, somebody listening to Megadeth. Shout out to Marlon. Looks like the rest of the world is ready to move on. And that's the impression that I'm getting too. I think people are just, it's going to get to a point where people are going to have to look out for themselves. That's how I feel. Let's get to this next story. This is an interesting one. Oh my God. If you haven't had a chance to do so, smash the like, ladies and gents. Let's get into this Epstein update. This is wild. There have been rumblings about special treatment that Ghislaine Maxwell has been receiving while she's in prison. And now we are starting to hear for the first time from some of the other inmates who said that they were punished because of Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here, ladies and gents. It's some crazy things going on.
Tonight, an Outfront exclusive. Jeffrey Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell's fellow inmates are speaking out tonight about Maxwell and the special treatment she received and how they say prison officials punished them for talking about it, for criticizing Maxwell. Maxwell, of course, is serving a 20-year prison sentence and is seeking a pardon now in exchange for her testimony about Epstein's network. So let's go straight to MJ Lee, who has spoken to these women. And MJ, what exactly are these inmates alleging happened after Maxwell arrived at their facility?
Yeah, Aaron, we are hearing for the first time from inmates who served time with Ghislaine Maxwell, and they say that they were punished after speaking out about her. You'll remember last summer, Maxwell was suddenly and mysteriously transferred to a minimum security prison camp in Bryan, Texas. It made little sense at the time because a convicted child sex offender is not typically allowed to serve time at a minimum security facility like that.
That facility in particular is not for violent offenders. So that tells you something else.
And adding to the intrigue at the time was that this was right after Maxwell had had this unusual 2-day interview with the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche. Julie Howell was one inmate at Bryan who was really upset about all of this. She says she consulted the inmate's handbook, which said that she could talk to media, and she decided to respond to a reporter at the Telegraph who had reached out. Here's a little bit of what Julie told me in her first interview since her prison sentence recently ended.
And so I was a little, I guess, I don't use the word lightly. It was like a trigger because of, my experience with my daughter being trafficked and just knowing all of the research I had done that the camps are supposed to be for nonviolent offenders. I was very upset about her being moved. I said, I had spoken with other inmates. Nobody was happy about her being there.
So let's just chime in here for just a second. This woman who was an inmate at the same prison with Ghislaine Maxwell, her daughter was trafficked. So of course she's going to be concerned. I don't know what she was in there for, but apparently not that. But of course she was going to be concerned that someone who was trafficking, underage girls is now in the same facility as her, especially considering the fact that violent offenders are not supposed to be at that prison. So remember what I said again about how Ghislaine Maxwell was very powerful and she comes from a family with a lot of money and strong connections and ties. That's how she's able to get into that prison. Anybody else, that would have not been the case. That just goes to show you how the system works for those who have money.
We all felt like we were being punished for her being there. And then given her crime, she shouldn't be there per BOP policies and procedures. And so it was very unfair.
And several days after she sends that message to the reporter through her husband, Julie says she gets called into the lieutenant's office. She doesn't know what's going on, but she quickly realizes that she's in trouble.
He says, did you speak to a reporter? He said, well, it's all over the World Wide Web. I waited in a cell for, I don't know, I think it was less than an hour. The warden came in, asked what I was thinking, said that her phone was blowing up all weekend. I ruined her weekend. I shouldn't have talked to them. And I did apologize. At this point, I'm a little teary-eyed. I said, I didn't mean to cause issues. I answered a question.
Pause. So this is someone who actually took time to look at the handbook to see what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. So she checked the rules first before she spoke to that reporter. So according to the handbook, she was not in violation of the rules. What seems to be the issue here is that the warden, and this needs to be looked into, because I'm starting to wonder if there hadn't been some money exchanging hands there, that there would be some special type of protection for Ghislaine Maxwell while she's at that facility from the press. And you never know, especially with a lot of these prisons and the private prisons. How do we know whether or not someone may have given some type of money to the warden to make sure that Ghislaine Maxwell would not get any type of press while she's at that prison? Because if it's not against the rule book, why was she being reprimanded for talking to a reporter? This is crazy, guys. Malty said she will be part. You know what? I think that could happen. I at first I said I don't think so, but I think that could happen, that she could get pardoned by Trump. But something is going on here. They are giving a lot of protection to Ghislaine Maxwell.
And I told her that my daughter had, a trafficking experience. She rolled her eyes and flipped her hair back, and she was like, "It's too late for apologies," and walked out.
Now, Julie was written up and sent to a higher security facility in Houston, and she is now on supervised release. The warden of the Bryan prison, Aaron, declined to comment for this story.
So they took that woman and sent her to a higher security prison, but Ghislaine Maxwell gets to maintain at the prison that's not for violent offenders, even though she is a violent offender. This is the problem, guys. Like, this is absolutely insane. This woman was sent to a higher security prison because she spoke to a reporter. But Ghislaine Maxwell, who should be in a higher security prison, gets to maintain her space at the prison for nonviolent offenders. All because of who she is and the money that she has and the connections that she has.
Wow. All right, so these retaliation claims, MJ, obviously are very significant, but you've also uncovered new allegations about how Maxwell was treated inside that facility. I mean, what did the inmates who were there with her describe to you?
Yeah, we spoke with the second inmate who was also at Bryan. She is anonymous. She's not going to be on camera because she's still serving time and is afraid of being punished even more. She described a very similar experience where she spoke with a reporter over the phone about Maxwell as well. And immediately she says she was kicked out of Bryan. This inmate overlapped with Maxwell for a number of weeks and says that she saw the special treatment that Maxwell was getting at the time.
Yes. So there's two. And I told you guys this before too. I saw video footage of Ghislaine Maxwell just walking around freely at the prison yard or whatever. Obviously that she was given certain privileges that the other inmates are not given. It's not a justice system. It's not justice for everybody. If you have money, you can get away with a lot of things. And I really do think like Ghislaine Maxwell right now was just buying time. I think that we'll have to wait and see. But it seems as though Donald Trump, he may give her a pardon. And then I think what's going to happen then, you will never see or hear from her again. She'll get on a plane. She'll go off to some other private island somewhere that they probably got that you don't know about. And you'll never hear from her again.
Within a day of her arrival, we had armed guards, marshals, patrolling. If she had a visitation, she would get to, they closed the chapel and the indoor rec and allowed her to use that building for her personal visits when we had visitation, that happened in the visitation building, which is good. We didn't, no one wanted her around the kids or anything. She'd get bottled waters and clamshell meals delivered to her room.
Sounds like to me, Ghislaine Maxwell was just living it up. Clamshell meals, bottled water. No one else is getting this.
A BOP spokesperson told CNN that the Bureau does not discuss details related to specific inmates and that it is committed to maintain the highest standards of integrity, impartiality, and professionalism in the operation of its facilities. Now, inmates can communicate with members of the media with prior approval, they said. The one prison expert that I spoke with said that it is absolutely not typical for an inmate to be punished for speaking to a reporter, Aaron. The DOJ and lawyers for Maxwell did not respond to requests for comment.
Interesting.
Of course they didn't, right? This story, I don't think is being talked about enough. This was a CNN special investigation. And if you try to read the CNN article, it's paywalled, but you can get it through another one. So I got it through this one. Inmates describe being punished for speaking out about Ghislaine Maxwell. Again, I feel like a lot of people are not talking about this story. And I think it's because of that paywall that they have like on the article, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. This is the facility right here, right? So federal prison camp, Bryan. See, it's called prison camp. So that lets you know, again, it's for nonviolent offenders. One of the things that I wanted to show you here is this part. Given the close public scrutiny of every aspect of the Epstein case, Maxwell's incarceration has been particularly sensitive subject. Convicted sex offenders are not typically eligible to serve time at a minimum security prison camp. So Maxwell's transfer to a low security prison in Tallahassee, Florida, to the Bryan prison camp last summer was very unusual. This is coming from prison consultants. It prompted speculation that the government was giving Epstein's accomplice special treatment in exchange for Maxwell staying quiet about Donald Trump's past relationship with Epstein. And look, it's a pay to play system. This is a pay to play system. If you can pay, you get to play. We cannot forget about Epstein. And another reason why we can't forget about this is because what Epstein's brother just said. A couple of days ago, it was announced that they apparently leaked or unsealed this letter that was allegedly written by Jeffrey Epstein, which was his unalive letter, allegedly, right? Epstein's brother just came out and said that this document is forged. Let me show you this. Here's the note. Here was that unsealed note, right? So I think you may have seen this before. A couple other people were talking about it. A note that may have been written by the late Jeffrey Epstein was unsealed by a federal judge on Wednesday. So the judge unsealed it. The note was sealed for years as part of the criminal case involving Epstein's cellmate. Remember, we talked about his cellmate, Nicholas Tarchiglione, and he was the guy that said that basically Epstein was left unprotected, where anybody could come in there and do whatever they wanted. Now, this is supposed to be the note, messy handwriting, but we'll read it down here. Here's what the note appears to say. They investigated me for months. Found nothing. It is a treat to be able to choose one's time to say goodbye. What you want me to do? Bust out crying? No fun, not worth it. That is supposed to be what that note says, which they alleged at the time was written by Jeffrey Epstein before he died. Now, I've told you guys again, it just, come on, man. You guys think we wouldn't have heard about this before? Right. There's a lot of things out there when it comes to this Epstein situation. And for me, like I told you guys, I'm not 100% sure I even know Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he's not. But when I heard about this note that was unsealed, I was like, okay, well, this goes against what the security guard said happened that night before, how he saw people come to his cell and take him out of there. So let me show you what his brother said about that note. Jeffrey Epstein's brother claims released unalive note is a forgery. So his brother has spoken out multiple times before. He's called into shows as well. So let me just scoot down here. Jeffrey Epstein's brother believes his brother's note that was released this week in court is fake. Mark Epstein called the document a forgery. I've known Jeff all my life. If he was going to do this, if he was going to write that type of note, he would have written it to somebody, not just a blanket statement saying goodbye. I don't buy that. Jeffrey Epstein's former cellmate claims to have discovered the document in July of 2019 after Epstein was found unresponsive, but alive in his cell. Then they said that Epstein died by unaliving the following month. It's bullshit, and let me explain why. Again, this is coming from his brother. In the July incident, Jeffrey's cellmate attacked him. He reported it as such. He told his lawyer as such. And then he recanted that story, saying he couldn't remember what happened because he was fearful of retaliation. For all we know, someone could be offering something to Jeffrey Epstein's former cellmate. He could be being paid off by someone somewhere. For all we know, you never know what could have been offered to push this forward. He goes on to say here, Epstein initially claimed that Tarchiglione, a former police officer who was convicted of leading a murder plot, tried to kill him, but the disgraced financier did not subsequently repeat the claim after he was moved to another cell. The note was initially sealed in court records. So they apparently had this note all that time. For all you know, this note could have been written by his cellmate. We really don't know. But his brother said that this note is forged. His brother has claimed for the longest time that he believes that Jeffrey Epstein was killed. So he's not going to change his course on that. So there's some weird things going on around here, folks. All of a sudden unsealing this note that apparently is from 2019. Ghislaine Maxwell's cellmates, coming forward publicly, 2 of them speaking to reporters, telling them that they were punished because, speaking to reporters, talking about the special treatment that Ghislaine Maxwell was getting, and then being punished for doing that. There's some shady things going on. I'm going to tell you what I think. I think that Donald Trump was crucial in helping Ghislaine Maxwell get the type of facility that she got, even though knowing she should not be there. She should have been in a facility that's for violent offenders. I think he was instrumental in that fact. And I say that, I believe it, because why else does Ghislaine Maxwell feel so comfortable asking him for a pardon twice? I believe he was a part of that. I believe he was instrumental in that. Nobody else is at that prison who's a violent offender, apparently, from what I've read. But she gets to go there. And she gets to go to a place where apparently she's not only going to be given special treatment, but she is also protected, not just physically, but also she's protected from the press. So the other inmates can't even talk to reporters about their experience with Ghislaine Maxwell and what's been happening to her at that facility. So she gets press protection too. So something is going on here. And I told you that she sent over a file to the DOJ right after Melania Trump made that statement where she said, she made that speech and she said she didn't know Ghislaine Maxwell and she didn't know Epstein and all this stuff. Remember that weird speech that she just gave out of nowhere? It was random as hell. After that speech, Ghislaine Maxwell sent over a thumb drive to the DOJ. My, what timing. I believe Ghislaine Maxwell has dirt on Trump, but I also believe she has dirt on Melania Trump as well. And I believe that Donald Trump and Melania are doing everything that they can to make sure that they make her as comfortable as possible so that she keep her mouth shut. As for this note, I don't know. I feel like they really might be throwing us in another direction. I do. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but this is very concerning. Very concerning. Crash and burn. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Okay, Harvard said Sabby, Don Cornelius passed away 15 minutes ago. I'm so sorry, Harvard. I'm so sorry. Somebody got me. They got me. Michael says, I'm not even sure that is even Maxwell. It looks like a stand-in to me. You know, they've been known to play all different types of games. Ting says, Sabs is the auntie I never had. Oh, that's really sweet. Really sweet. Let's get to something fun, huh? Can we do a funny story? Okay, let's do a funny story. It's Sunday. I try to always have a funny story on Sunday. So, comedian, actor, Druski, you guys know he does a lot of funny skits. And we talked about the one he did recently about Erica Kirk. Well, now he is making fun of Hollywood. And I'm sorry, I thought this was so fitting. It's so fitting. So let's watch the clip, and then I'm going to tell you what this is really about. Druski says British actors are taking all the roles. So this is him pretending to be a British actor in a movie called Release the Shackles.
You promise you go with me now? Bro, stop talking like that. You ain't going to no big city. Mass ain't gonna let you. Yeah, I'm going with or without you. Rudy, stop talking like that. Stop. Hey, what are you niggers doing over there? We gotta get out of here. Hey, what are you doing? And cut! Fantastic. I need more American slave. Okay? Like struggle. So, yeah, the struggle. Like, sort of like the dialogue, like the back and forth banner. Absolutely. Yes.
See, this role was sort of a bit cheeky. I got a little bit out of my comfort zone, you know. During the filming of this role in this character, I felt oppressed, like an American slave, like a lot of struggle. I studied the art.
A fantastic turnout on the red carpet tonight. I'm just
going to jump in for just a second and I'll let it finish playing because I want to tell you guys like what's happening here. So for a long time, Skylar said Druski's terrible British accent makes me even funnier. I know, he tried, right? This is something that people have been talking about for quite some time, that like there has been, a need here or whatever for Hollywood. A lot of times they hire British actors to play these roles. So a lot of times when you see movies like 12 Years of as a Slave, what was it? 12 Years of a Slave, as a Slave, whatever. I don't watch a lot of these slave movies because, but 12 Years as a Slave, there's other ones. A lot of times when you watch those movies, those actors tend to be British actors. So there has been this thing, what people are noticing this with Hollywood, and people have been like calling it out for quite some time, especially actors in Hollywood have been calling it out. And they're like, what the hell is going on? Like, why do you guys keep hiring all the British actors? Now I'm going to get to the bottom of that in just a second, but I want to finish this skit here. But some people are upset because Druski is calling this out. So he's managed to piss off people again, a different group of people this time.
arriving. We have Samson Dubois at the American Guild Awards.
Samson, you look great tonight.
How hard was it for you to change your accent?
As a little boy from Manchester, I think, I struggle a bit with the dialect, right? But to really get into character for this quite astonishing role that I took on, to say the least, I put it all on the line.
All right, 3, 2, 1, action.
I'm telling you, nigga, if you fuck with my shit, I'll kill you, nigga. You'll be fucked up. Fuck. Nigga, we family. Nigga, ain't no fucking family in this shit. We not family, nigga. Fuck family.
Hey, cut. That's the one.
That was stunning. Great performance. Great performance. Working with.
So that's supposed to be a gangster film where he is also playing like an American, like, you know, gangster guy or whatever. And that's, we'll get to the Key and Peele part in just a second, but that's hilarious to me too, because you know who else does this? Like when I saw this, it reminds me of Idris Elba. Idris Elba, a Black British actor. He's in everything. Like, I don't know, he's in everything, but he was in that movie, I think it was called Takers, where it was him and Chris Brown and a bunch of other people. That one guy who was like in the Star Wars movie, Hayden Christensen, like it was a bunch of people in that movie. Like he does a lot of roles like that. For the longest time, I did not know that Idris Elba was British because he played a lot of like American roles. But that's what I thought about when I saw like the gangster movie part there. Let's go.
A good London boy, and I bother him all the time. I had a call with that director. It was quite quintessential to the role, and great character development behind it.
I put this fucking bullet in your head, nigga.
I laugh because I'm penniless and a bit quite surreal.
Samson Dubois. Samson, yo, who's the girl? Who's the girl?
What's your next movie? What's your next movie?
Yo, do you think your British accent gets you all the black roles in America?
Come on, bro. Are you serious, bro?
Do you think you're better than them?
Better than who, bro? Black people.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah. So some people, let me just pause it right here. Some people are not happy that Druski made this skit. Surprise, surprise. You know, he makes fun of everybody. He made fun of the pastors, like take all your money. He made fun of Erica Kirk. And now he's making fun of the Hollywood movie industry that likes to a lot of times hire British actors for these types of roles instead of American actors. And there have been American actors who have spoken up about this. And they're saying like, hey, like, why are you guys not considering us for these roles? And a lot of times people don't know. A lot of times people don't realize it. Whereas, could you do the reverse? Could a Black American actor go to the UK and get those roles, right? So let's get into why that happens in just a second. But I thought it was funny. But I want to show you he wasn't the only one that did this, because how many of you remember Key and Peele? Raise your hand if you ever saw Key and Peele. Key and Peele was kind of like long form sketch comedy, which I think Dave Chappelle kind of hinted towards that, you know, they got that from him. But you guys have seen Key and Peele before. So they made fun of this too a couple of years ago. And it was called Key and Peele did this 6 years ago. And I'll get to the Robert Townsend part as well. Why British actors end up with American roles. I can't play it because of copyright. But to make a long story short, Key and Peele are playing this scene here where they're supposed to be gang members or something like that. And Peele is, you know, his character actually in real life was once a member of a gang. And Key over here, he's British. He's an actor and he studied in the theater, as he says, like in the clip, he was like, I was in the theater. And it's so funny because he goes on to say, you know, I learned from my mom and all those types of things. So during that scene, they're saying, you don't play me. I'll tell you, I'll do it for you in a second. But they're saying, you can't play me. I'm the one that gets played or whatever. But Peele's character in real life was an actual gang member who turned into an actor. And the director of the movie at that point in time, which is played by Tom Hanks' son, the director says that he is not feeling or buying the energy that Peele is giving off. And so Jordan Peele says, but wait a minute. He was like, no, I really was a part of a gang. Like I really was in that life. I really was in these streets. And Tom Hanks, you know, son, he says, I'm just not really believing it with your character. I'm not buying it. But he turns to Key's character and he says, man, you're doing a great job. Like, I totally believe like you're from the streets. And it's so funny because Key's character is not, he's British. And then he's talking about like, I learned how to be like this from the theater. And so it's a funny skit. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Right. But what they say in this scene is the one that keeps being, you know, replayed is, you can't play me. I'm the one who plays. Peele's character says, you can't play me, motherfucker. I'm the one who plays motherfuckers, motherfucker. That's the scene. And the way that Peele's character says it, I think is really good. But every time he says that line, the director comes in and the director says, yeah, I'm just not feeling that you're really liking a gang. I don't know. So it's funny. It's funny, right? But Robert Townsend also called this out. I can't play this one either because of copyright, but Robert Townsend has been talking about Black American versus Black British actors since 1987 in his film Hollywood Shuffle. So Robert Townsend called this out a long time ago. And for those who don't know or not familiar with him, Robert Townsend, director, producer, he's been in the industry for a long time. I think one of the most famous movies he was a part of was The Five Heartbeats, which if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch it, especially if you like music. But he called it out too. And he was making fun of it in this skit, talking about, I went to the acting school of such and such to get these roles. Now, why am I bringing this up? One of the things that is mentioned is the reason why Hollywood is hiring British actors to play these roles is because they are better trained. That they are more serious about their acting, that they learned so much in the theater. I want to show you this so you can see it for yourself, because I told you actors have been complaining about this in the US, the talent, the twang, how the Brits and Irish stormed Hollywood. So we're going to get into, there's a whole number of actors here. And for those who are not aware, this happens for, it's not just doesn't just happen to Black actors in Hollywood. It happens to white American actors in Hollywood too. And in fact, some of these people that you see in many of these roles, you probably had no idea that they're actually not American actors, right? Someone brought this up with the movie Barbie. Someone was like, they picked Margot Robbie to play Barbie. And, Margot Robbie is also, British. It happens more often than you realize. But one of the things I want to mention here is they bring up Idris Elba. First, a group of talented Black stars, including David Harwood of Homeland and Idris Elba of The Wire, felt they had a better chance of good roles and good pay in Los Angeles. Then a slew of superhero signings was spotted. The British raised Andrew Garfield was cast as Spider-Man, Welshman Christian Bale as Batman, and the Stowe-educated Henry Cavill as Superman. So I want you to pay attention to what Idris Elba said, that they would get paid more in Los Angeles than what they're being paid in the UK, right? So that is really important. And one of the things I want to say is this. They get paid more in LA compared to what they would get paid in the UK, according to Idris Elba. But I would also add that Hollywood is still paying them less than what they would pay the American actors. And I'll show you what Samuel L. Jackson said about that. A lot of times this comes down to money. Oh, she's Australian. Thank you, Gail. She's Australian. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't know, and they'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know, this actor was British until I heard them in an interview. But another one here that I want to get to when they talk about the training. Here we go. British actors, O'Reilly added, are happy to switch vocal techniques and are prepared to study. They come from a tradition of vocal skill and training. The Brits are steeped in a tradition of many, many years of having the appreciation of variations on their speech. And there is a pride in it. So this is one of the things you'll see over and over that is said, is that they have a lot of training in this area. And they tend to, I guess, take that very seriously, I guess, in respect to accents, right? So you see a lot of British actors playing American roles, they have to switch up their accent. How many times do American actors get to do the same thing? That's something to think about. How many times do American actors have to learn a British accent? Right? So think about that. That's something. But that's one of the reasons. But that's not the only reason. When we talk about the money, again, a lot of times it all comes back to money. This is what Samuel L. Jackson said, and he said this in 2017. Samuel L. Jackson claims that British actors are cast because they're cheaper than U.S. counterparts. What I tell you? Ding, 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 ding. Here we go. So Samuel L. Jackson, he's very outspoken about a number of things. With the likes of Idris Elba, David Harwood, Naomi Harris, and Daniel Kaluuya landing lead roles where they play Americans, veteran Jackson spoke of his dismay at the trend. During an interview with U.S. radio station Hot 97, Samuel L. Jackson was asked his opinion on why Hollywood might be picking British talent instead of Americans. I don't know what the love affair with all that is, he told the radio show. We've got a lot of brothers here that need work too. See, that's another thing that people have been calling out, right? Now, in this conversation with the radio host, Ebro Darden, he laughed and he suggested that budget is a factor. They're cheaper than us for a start. And directors think they're better than us because they're classically trained. So we are seeing two reasons why this happens: the classical training and money. They pay them less. Didn't we talk about this before when we had that whole conversation about what Vivek Ramaswamy said, when Vivek Ramaswamy was saying that Americans weren't as educated and all that type of stuff? Remember that? So I noticed this too when I was working at university, and when my students, when they would graduate from the program, when they were trying to get jobs, a lot of times these companies, they want to hire people cheaply. So whoever they can get for a cheaper price, that's really who they want. Most of the time, especially when you're coming right out of college. So they know if a student is here on a visa and they want to work for the company, they need a work visa. So they don't feel pressed to offer them more money. They don't feel pressed to offer them $70,000 a year like they would for an American student who doesn't need a work visa. See what I'm saying? And I saw that happen to my students a lot, especially the international students. I noticed that they were offered less. So a lot of times it's about who you can hire cheaper. Jackson was questioned about his thoughts on a new comedy horror flick, Get Out, which stars Daniel Kaluuya. The film centers on, remember Daniel Kaluuya, the movie Get Out? Hope everybody's seen Get Out by now. Remember that? Yeah. So with Daniel Kaluuya, he got a lot of praise for that role. Also, Daniel Kaluuya played Fred Hampton. I don't know if everybody remembers that. Daniel Kaluuya played Fred Hampton in the movie that came out a couple years ago about Fred Hampton's life. And some people weren't happy about that either. So again, they pay them less than what they would pay the American actors. Daniel grew up in a country where there have been interracial dating for 100 years. What would a brother from America have made of that role? He's talking about the role that he had in Get Out. He also added, some things are universal, but not everything is. Get Out's director, Jordan Peele, has previously spoken about his concerns over casting a British actor in his film. So yeah, Jordan Peele got some pushback from people about that as well. So one of the things I think that people tend to find really issue with, FM said great actor, but I wasn't happy about it. Yeah, I heard that from a number of people because people are like, that's Fred Hampton, But I tend to see this a lot with the slave movies. But I've also started to notice it with historical figures too. And I got to tell you guys, and I know I mentioned this before, when Zoe Saldana, hell of an actress, but when they hired Zoe Saldana to play Nina Simone, that made me feel some kind of way. The fact that they actually put, they put blackface, they darkened her skin. And they put this fake nose on her and everything. That I was like, what is happening here? Now, Zoe herself did come forward afterwards and said that she shouldn't have done that role. She said that herself. But I've noticed it. Watch it. Pay attention to the slave movies. A lot of the times, they're British actors. Yeah, they feel like they can hire them cheaper. That's a big part of it. They can hire them cheaper. So there's the whole classical training thing, but honestly, in my opinion, it comes down to money. So I thought Druski's skit there was spot on. He pissed off some people. He pissed off some people for sure. But sometimes these things need to be said. Sometimes these things need to be said. And, when we talk about like jobs, I mean, that's still a job. Acting is still a job. And now with the rise of AI, and I mean, I'm seeing all these videos where it's not even a real person. It's just AI. It makes you wonder how long many of these actors are going to be able to continue to have longevity. So some people are crashing and burning because they just can't take what he said, but it's true. So sometimes the truth hurts. Got to keep it real. Got to keep it real. All right, let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Da, 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 da. Thank you for the super sticker, Gigi. Thank you. Thank you, Kenman. Stop hiring Margot Robbie all the time. Some people I know, there are certain actors that I feel like it's always the same people, Thank you, Michelle. Yes, MTG has come around on some issues, but she's still a white supremacist, and the black left should not align with that. We're just about to get into that story. Let me see here. Yeah, we're just about to get into that story. Thank you. Oh, I think you said this twice, Michelle. Thank you, Libertarian. Timothy Stickney, underrated FBA theater trained. Thank you, Chip Walter. The Brits work cheaper and what are we doing now? The Brits work cheaper, and we're not going to say that on here. Are all nephews. Yeah, and nobody watches these movies anymore because they all stink. Who is surprised? Thank you, Cougar Lady. Sabby, you are spot on. Black women like Amber Riley from Glee and former Miss America Vanessa Williams had to go to London to get roles they would not get on Broadway. Broadway is just as bad. Yeah, I heard Broadway can be brutal. Thank you, Descent. There's always Tubi, Sab. There is. Yeah, there's Tubi. There is. Okay, let's get to the AOC story. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's get into this AOC, MTG, and Chris Smalls, because some people aren't telling the full story with this. Let's get into this whole story. First and foremost, for me, this is not about AOC, MTG. This is about personality. This is about a cult of personality. And I'm going to prove my point with that because I feel like some people, they're talking about what AOC said about MTG and her response and other people and all that kind of stuff. But they're not getting to the full picture. So let me show you what she said. AOC said this recently about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and this is kind of what kicked off the uproar. There are people on the left that are also pushing back on AOC. It's not just people on the right calling it. You got to remember, I want to say this. Remember, some people on the right don't like Marjorie Taylor Greene now either because she's calling out Trump. But I think what's surprising some people is that some of the people on the left are pointing to AOC and they're saying, okay, this is uncalled for. But I think everybody is missing the note, which is the fact that this is about a cult of personality. And I'm warning everybody now that going into 2028, you all need to be aware of this. Never get yourself behind a cult of personality. This is what she said.
And I care about results. I care about results. Now, there are certain places certain areas where I don't think that we should ignore some folks' record on some of these issues, right? It's about where we trust intent, where we trust where those outcomes are going. I personally do not trust someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, a proven bigot and anti-Semite, on the issues of what is good for Gazans and Israelis. I don't think that it benefits our movement in that instance to align the left with white nationalists. I don't think it serves us. And so I think it's about looking at the context, the place, the results, the outcomes, intentions, and where we think that train would go. But as far as what someone says about me, I could care less. And, I think it's really about what our outcomes are. And to be honest, there are some areas where things will not get done if they're partisan because they are anti-establishment. There is bipartisan consensus on keeping and protecting stock trading in Congress. And so it's going to require massive bipartisan consensus of people willing to come together across those differences to get it done.
So let me just chime in here for a second, okay? AOC, if she does not want to work alongside Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's her decision. That's her choice. She has every right to do that. That's not the issue that I take. I thought it was interesting that she said that she doesn't want to align with white nationalists, white supremacists, but she has. Because as much as she said about Marjorie Taylor Greene, she had no problem aligning with Tom Cotton. She had no problem aligning with Ted Cruz, which I'm going to show you in just a second. But I think one of the things that's very revealing in this speech is that she called Marjorie Taylor Greene anti-Semitic. She didn't call her anti-Black. She said she was anti-Semitic. Now, you may be wondering, why does that matter? You have to remember, AOC agreed to the new definition of anti-Semitism, which I told you guys on this show is very dangerous. She agreed to that. And I take serious issue when people just start throwing that word around, because I'm noticing that a lot. AOC said some of the pro-Palestinian protesters were anti-Semitic. Did you know that? Because you see, those of us who are actually organizing and on the ground, we can tell you that. The protesters who were protesting outside the churches that were auctioning off like Palestinians' homes in the West Bank, AOC said those people were anti-Semitic. Let's get to Marjorie Taylor Greene's response, because people are really melting down over this. And I'm just going to show you something. This is going somewhere. Watch this. So Marjorie Taylor Greene says, AOC refused to vote for my amendment to strip funding for Israel. She can run her mouth all she wants, but votes are the only thing that matter, not a bunch of words and nasty name calling. So here's the thing. That was Marjorie Taylor Greene's response to AOC. And I'm going to tell you how both of them, this is why I say it's about a cult of personality. The nasty name calling, Marjorie Taylor Greene did nasty name calling too, which I'm going to show you. They both have done it. These two have always gone back and forth with each other for quite some time. They've been very nasty to each other, both of them. The point I think that MTG is trying to make is that she's willing to move forward now. And I felt like what AOC could have said in that statement, if she wanted to say, I just don't see myself aligning with this person, fine. But what threw me was the anti-Semitic thing. People just throwing that word around like anything, and I don't hear a lot of these people call people anti-Black. Everything's always just, this person's anti-Semitic. I don't hear them throwing out anti-Black though. That right there tells me something. Because I saw some anti-Blackness come from so-called leftists thrown towards Chris Small's way. These are the things I pay attention to. Those of us who do actually organize, and by organize, I don't mean you go just knock on doors to help get people elected. I'm talking about those of us who organize year round. We've seen it. I've felt it. I've experienced it. And I told you guys before, this type of energy is not going to help. And I'm seeing it, this cult of personality. Now I want to show you, just to prove my point. I told you, Marjorie Taylor Greene has done name calling too. Yes, she has. When Marjorie Taylor Greene said this, I called her out on this. She said the Hamas caucus led by Rashida Tlaib, AOC, and Ilhan Omar treat Hamas terrorists better than January 6 prisoners. Why is that? When she came after Rashida Tlaib and called her Hamas this and all the type of stuff, I called out Marjorie Taylor Greene too. You see, the people who are online and they're mad at me because I took issue with what AOC said. They're not telling you that part. They're not telling you that I called out Marjorie Taylor Greene too. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene was questioned about some of the things that she said on CNN, and she said she apologizes and all this type of stuff. I would say I think that Marjorie Taylor Greene, it would be nice to make an apology to Rashida Tlaib and especially to Rashida Tlaib. All of us were calling this out back then. That was 2023. We were all calling it out. But apparently, we're not supposed to say anything about AOC when she's in the wrong. This is Wally Rashid. Wally Rashid is a Palestinian American. He said AOC will align herself with Richie Torres, who has spent years justifying Israel's murder of Palestinians because he is a Democrat. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, who spoke out against the same atrocities, is the real bigot AOC can't work with. But she's worked with other ones. This is what I mean about the cult of personality. It's not really even about that. It's about people protecting their party. She's willing to work alongside Richie Torres because even though Richie Torres is a Zionist and supports the genocide, he's still a Democrat. That's why she's willing to work alongside him. We go to another one here. Even Ryan Grimm called out AOC. Marjorie Taylor Greene sacrificed her political career to stand against genocide, against Trump, against the Epstein class, and to defend the survivors of Epstein's trafficking. If that doesn't earn credibility, I don't know what possibly could. That's from Ryan Grimm, who loves AOC. But apparently you're not supposed to criticize her. And that's what worries me. That we are running into the same issue. And I'm warning people right now, come 2028, if she does run, I don't think she's going to run in 2028. I mean, it's 2026 now. I don't think she's going to, but if she were to run in 2028, I have this fear that we're entering into this cult of personality again, where you can't criticize, you can't have any accountability or anything. And if you're due, then people are just going to chew your heads off. What are we doing? Speaking of chewing off heads. So Ryan said that, and then here comes Mehdi Hassan. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys something. Mehdi Hassan, he came after Ryan. He came after me too, but I can't reply to him because he has me blocked. He came after Ryan Grimm, and he said, the problem with this argument, Ryan, is that Liz Cheney also sacrificed her political career to stand up to Trump and took far more shit for it from both the right and the left than MTG. I can't stand Liz Cheney, and I don't think Harris should have campaigned with her so much, but I just wonder why we can't be consistent. And this is what Ryan says. Easy to be consistent here. Liz Cheney did, in fact, sacrifice her career to oppose Trump. It's totally fine to say that. Doesn't mean you're endorsing everything else she stands for or that she should be out on stage. That's the part I think that's important. One second. Sorry, guys. I still have this cold, so I'm coughing a bit. Notice he said, doesn't mean you're endorsing everything she stands for. And that's the part. I think some people, when they saw this, when they saw people saying, whoa, what are you doing? Like MTG did do these things. Some people saw that as though that you were automatically a Marjorie Taylor Greene stan. Because there's a number of leftists that push back on AOC for the statement. And that's not what I know for me. That's not what I'm saying at all. He goes on to say, MTG sacrificed her career to stand up to Trump over the genocide and Epstein. Also easy to say that. Doesn't mean you're endorsing everything else she stands for by acknowledging that. But AOC's point was that MTG lacks credibility on that specific issue. I think what MTG did earned her credibility on that issue quite obvious. I understand AOC's skepticism. MTG over the years directly and regularly harassed and taunted her, going to her office to troll her. But on the question of whether MTG has earned credibility on the genocide and in her fight over Epstein, I think she quite clearly has. That's from Ryan Grimm, who loves AOC. So one of them still has their seat, one of them doesn't. Something to keep in mind. He came after me. Mehdi Hasan came after me. The idea that AOC refused to call out Biden over the genocide is just a lie, a demonstrable lie. So he puts up this screenshot of this tweet of AOC saying, the horrors unfolding in northern Gaza are the result of completely unrestrained Netanyahu government. Fully armed by the Biden administration while food aid is blocked and patients are bombed in hospitals. This is the genocide of the Palestinians. The U.S. must stop enabling the arms embargo now. Okay. So he retweeted that to what I said here. What I said was there are several issues where I disagree with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But unlike AOC, she publicly called out Trump during his presidency. AOC refused to do this to Biden. Okay, I'll give him credit for this. She said that tweet there. But what Mehdi Hasan leaves out is that AOC didn't do that until she was pressured by protesters to do so. You know when she sent out that tweet? When she was confronted by pro-Palestinian protesters and they were begging her and demanding her to call it a genocide and to call out Biden. We showed those videos on this channel. That's when she put out that tweet. And the fact that that is just that one tweet. So he knows, and you can't see it here. Like here, it looks like I can reply, but as you'll see, that's not my account. This is Eric's account because I'm using Type VNC. This is Eric's stuff. So on my account, I can't reply to him because he blocked me. So he did this from behind a block. You see what I'm talking about? This is the cult of personality. And this is what is going into 2028. And I'm warning everybody now, I'm not for that shit. Do not bring that over here. I don't align with said individual. I align with said policies. 2, Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't even in Congress anymore. So when AOC said, I'm not willing to work alongside Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, like I said, that's her prerogative. But Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't even there. And then part of me wonders if this undermines what her and Ro Khanna have been doing. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ro Khanna have worked across the aisle for the Epstein files. They were just on CNN recently wanting to work together on more issues, maybe out on the outside, because she's not in Congress anymore. And then AOC says that, well, no, I'm not going to align. And that's her right. She can align with who she wants to align with. But when she had to throw in the anti-Semitic thing, you know, part of me wonders if the real reason she didn't support Marjorie Taylor Greene's legislation to block the arms from Israel is because the Zionists did not want her to. And no, AOC doesn't take money from AIPAC, from the pro-Israel lobby. She doesn't. But she's voted with them. That's why I said you can't just follow the money. So Mehdi doesn't tell you that. Max Blumenthal, AOC will not team up with Marjorie Taylor Greene to sanction Israel because of identity politics, but she teamed up with Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton to call for more sanctions on China. She did. That one was a wild one, man. That was her and Tom. That was Tom Cotton. So people, she said, no, we can't team up with her because she's a white nationalist. So Tom Cotton is a white nationalist. But she had no problem teaming up with him. So Mehdi Hassan talked about consistency. Let's talk about consistency. See, people, they're not telling you this. The people who are out there running to jump to AOC's defense because they've already decided that's going to be their person for 2028. And if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But the people who are jumping to that defense, they're not telling you this stuff. They're not showing you what I'm showing you. And that's intentional because many of them, I know that they know. Then there's this, working tirelessly for a ceasefire, which she knew was false. Ilhan Omar had to call out AOC on this. Ilhan Omar called out AOC publicly and said that that was a lie. She knows they were not working on a ceasefire. He had an own member of the squad who called her out on it. And I remember seeing people giving Ilhan Omar shit on X too after she did that. That's the cult of personality. This idea that there's nothing this person can do. I point out this part here. This is from Ashley. This is a leftist. Summer Lee represents a district with a large pro-Israel population, but has never wavered in her support for Palestinian rights, despite multiple primaries and attacks from AIPAC. Meanwhile, AOC represents a safe district and talked about offensive and defensive weapons until it became politically safe to oppose all aid. She doesn't stand for anything. That's a leftist, by the way. But since she brought up Summer Lee, this just proves my point. Why are people trying to make AOC be what they want her to be when you already do have someone in Congress that's voting the way that you want them to vote on those issues, and her name is Summer Lee? Why aren't all of these leftists rallying around Summer Lee like that? Anybody ever asked this question? I'll tell you why. You know, Zineb Day, who worked with Justice Democrats, she's been on the show multiple times before. She actually wrote AOC's communications. She was a part of the communications team. You know what Zineb Day said? Zineb Day said there were certain things that she was told specifically not to include in AOC's bio. And that's about her job, like the jobs that she had, the fact that she had, you know, that startup with those 2 Israeli investors. According to Zineb, AOC did not want that information in her bio. Why not? Why aren't all of these AOC? A lot of the attention was focused on her. This is what Zineb explained to me, because she had the safest district. There were a lot of Justice Democrats in 2018. Some of them you probably never heard of because they weren't given as much attention. There was a lot of attention that was given to AOC. And according to Zineb, she explained that's because AOC had the safest district. So the idea was to put most of the focus on her because she was the one that was more likely to win and stay in. That's why a lot of these other people you never heard about. There were teachers that were running. There was all types of, like Anthony Clark. They didn't get any of this attention. It was already decided that she was going to be the one, that after Bernie, she was going to be the one. So how is that any different than what the Democrat establishment is doing when they already select someone and they say Kamala is going to be the one? How is that any different? When they said Biden was going to be the one, how is that any different? So Summer Lee actually votes the way that people have been asking AOC to vote. But I don't see all these people who jump up defending AOC. I don't see them promoting Summer Lee like that. I wonder why. I wonder why. And that leads me to the Chris Smalls issue, the Chris Smalls piece of this. This is also about the cult of personality. Chris Smalls was arrested at the Met Gala. He was protesting outside the Met Gala, and rightfully so. Chris Smalls, activist, started a union, first Amazon union in the country, in the world, actually. He started that along with many other organizers. And Chris Smalls has continued to organize since then. Chris Smalls was arrested recently for protesting outside the Met Gala. So that happened. Here's Chris Smalls right here. As you guys can see, that's him right there getting dragged away by the police. So he was arrested. Apparently, after they arrested him, people were trying to figure out where he was. So Jessica Burbank, journalist Jessica, she's been on the show before. She put out the message that they found him. So Jessica said a big thank you to AOC and her team who helped locate where shut down Amazon is Chris Smalls, where he was being detained this morning. It means a lot to have a member of Congress spring into action and support with this in a moment's notice. Well, Chris Smalls responded to this and he said, "That's blue cap. My team found me. Definitely don't want to give that credit to AOC. I have not heard from her in 4 years since we unionized." That's Chris Smalls' response. He's saying it was his team that found him. Here comes the call to personality. Joe Roat says, "Why would AOC reach out to you? You were sued out of the ALU leadership years ago. You're a celebrity activist. That's great, but AOC doesn't need to kiss your feet." So I'm warning everybody right now. This right here, those who do want AOC in 2028, if she runs, this behavior right here, this energy, that's going to be a problem. Here's the thing. Look, Chris Smalls, he organized, he started a union. He had never done it before. Chris Smalls is not perfect. He was basically learning as he went along. But he did something none of the rest of us did not do. We did not organize the first Amazon, union in the country. Yes, there were disputes between like the members and things after that. But that still to me doesn't take away from what Chris Smalls did. And what I found very interesting about this in the cult of personality was the fact that all these people who were attacking Chris when he corrected Jessica, all these people were totally fine with Chris as long as he was willing to play their game. But now that they no longer need him, they can talk to him like this. This is something I've noticed, and I've said this before. I've talked about that type of anti-Blackness on the right. Now I'm going to say something about the anti-Blackness that happens sometimes on the left. A lot of times, these organizations, and this guy's from DSA, a lot of times they use the Black faces when they need you. The moment that they don't need you anymore, they have no more use for you, this is how they talk to you. I know because I've been spoken to that way in my face. I went through it. There's a reason why DSA does not have more Black members. It's a known issue. Goes on to say here, Chris has organized one workspace. It still doesn't have a contract. I have not organized many workspaces, but I've organized more than Chris. You see the energy that be coming from these spaces, fam? Do you see the energy that comes from these spaces? And then the same people will come to me and they'll get mad and say, "Why don't we have more Black people in DSA?" Because you treat us like this. Chris Smalls not only put his job on the line, which you're not supposed to retaliate against unions, but he did. Chris Smalls not only put his job on the line, he put his fucking life on the line. Chris Smalls went on the Freedom Flotilla. Chris Smalls was beaten and choked in an Israeli prison. And this is how they talk to him because they no longer need him anymore. They got the use that they needed from him during all the labor, organizing and uprising under the Biden administration. Now, because Chris Smalls calls out the Democratic Party for supporting the genocide, they don't need him anymore. Okay, we got what we needed from you. We done with you now. That's how it works. This is the cult of personality. How dare you? The fact that these people would sit up here and come after Chris Smalls this way, after this guy risked his life. He risked his life for a cause because he corrected what Jessica said, which was that his team found him and that he hasn't heard from AOC in 4 years. These people won't tell you what I'm telling you. This is even about the whole, when it comes to even white nationalists and all this stuff, it's not even about that. It's about whether or not you're going to cap for the Democratic Party. Because some of these same people who are saying this white nationalist, that, some of these same people talk to black people like they ain't shit. Especially after they got what they wanted from you. I don't care if you support AOC or Marjorie Taylor Greene. I really don't give a damn. But one thing I will say, if either one of them runs, they're going to need to court independence. That's how you win. So this whole I'm only going to cap for my team thing, that shit ain't going to work. That's the part that people don't want to hear. Chris Smalls went on to say, I'm only addressing this AOC shit once. I looked up to her just like many others on the left, but when she started selling out over Palestine, it was a wrap. Secondly, I already stated I haven't had a conversation with her in 4 years. She, her team, her staff, whoever. He's just correcting the record. Now, he is not angry towards Jessica. He said, shout out to Jessica for attempting to help. She's the homie for life and don't deserve to be dragged as far as my statement about my team. So he's not mad at Jessica. But the way I saw white DSA members come after Chris Smalls, an organizer, someone who risked their life to protect AOC, when all he did was say she did not find him. That tells you everything you need to know. There's a reason why you don't see me in these fucking organizations. No, I don't want to be a part of any fucking cult. I've been very clear about this. I'm not a part of the Republican Party. I'm not a part of the Democratic Party. I am registered no party affiliation. I don't want to be a member of DSA or any of these other groups or conservative hoo-has. I don't want to be a part of any fucking organization other than the mutual aid organization I'm a part of right now. That's it. Because at the end of the day, it's all about a cult of personality. The moment you decide you're not going to bow to the cult, these people got a fucking problem. I got a problem with that. I got a problem with the way they sitting up here talking to a black activist as if he means nothing now. He means nothing to them now. Because he's not willing to bow to the feet of the queen. I took this same type of energy and attitude towards those who felt Donald Trump could do no fucking wrong. I have warned you consistently about this cult of personality. Blakely, who, from what I understand, Blakely, she's been on the show multiple times. Blakely is a Democrat. This is what Blakely said, and everybody needs to hear this.
I know I got to make this quick because I got to leave for my appointment to get my implant, but the way that a lot of people in DSA are treating Chris Smalls right now is precisely the reason why Black leftists don't trust white leftists, or why Black people don't trust white people in general. I've been literally arguing with people for the last day on Twitter who keep trashing Chris Smalls and smearing him because he had the audacity to criticize AOC. Right. We're gonna trash a labor leader, okay? Somebody who literally got fucking kidnapped by the Israeli regime and beat in their prison, and then also got detained coming back from a solidarity trip with Cuba. We're gonna smear him and just say he's a celebrity activist because he dare criticize your politician queen. And the people arguing with me about it, being like, one person wrote on Twitter, you really need to do some research on him. First of all, I've known him for years, but what they were doing was trying to smear him about the ALU. And that is the part that I'm talking about. You guys will say no war but class war, and then constantly reminds your Black comrades that they're Black. And by that, I mean undermining them with shit like what people were writing on Twitter. You really need to look into him and what happened at the ALU. How come he doesn't get any grace? Every union, organization, and drive has its issues.
Did you notice what she said about grace? So these same people, they're willing to give grace to AOC, but they're not willing to give grace to Chris Smalls because he's not a politician, because he's not capping for the Democratic Party. He's an organizer. He's doing more than what AOC is doing. Chris Smalls also organized the dock workers overseas. So, but he don't get grace. After he put his body on the line, he doesn't get that grace. That's the call to personality.
Was just a regular person that was fired from his job doing the best that he could. But Black people were never given the grace to mess up, to have moments of struggle and growth. You guys are just like, oh, he's a grifter, which, by the way, you guys ruined that word. You literally call everyone you don't like a grifter, okay? Normalize just admitting you don't fucking like someone without calling them a grifter. And because he's not praising AOC, like, that's why you guys don't like it. Like, it's so embarrassing. But stop complaining about how there aren't enough Black leftists in DSA when that is how you guys treat them. I know a lot of Black people, including Chris, would love to be able to just focus on our shared fight against the ruling class. But you guys keep reminding him that it isn't just a class struggle, because the way you treat him is giving super fucking anti-Black and not giving him any of the same grace or understanding that you would give somebody else.
What I tell you. And she's right. There's a reason why you don't see more of us in DSA. It's a complete crash and burn. Complete crash and burn. She's correct. Like, I experienced all of this stuff. And I'm not talking about on Twitter. I'm not talking about online. I'm talking about in person. I experienced all this. And I was just like, wow. I think, you know what? I remember this. These people are also anti-Black. So don't come to me and say it's just about a class war. And the way that they were going after Chris Smalls was wild, all to protect AOC. So it's coming. And I'm warning everybody now, it's coming. And we're just seeing the beginning of it. So support whoever the fuck you want. I really don't care. I don't care. I'm not a politician. I have no stake in this game. I don't stand for either one of these parties. I'm not looking for access like that. I have no stake in this at all. But you know what I just realized? Last time I was on Bad Faith, Bree was asking me, who do you want your candidate to be? Now, at the time, I was thinking about people who were already politicians. And I realized I was thinking the wrong fucking way. If Bree were to ask me that question today, I can answer it. You know who I would want my politician to be? I would want Chris Smalls to be my politician. I would support, I would support Chris Smalls 2028. Somebody who put their body on the line. Somebody who I know did the work on the ground. That's who I would want my politician to be. Not someone who's been in the halls of Congress And that's all of them. I'm saying it's all of them, not the ones that have been in the halls of Congress at this point in time. I would want it to be Chris Smalls. We are going to go to the last story, which is also fucking crazy. I'm sorry, you guys. Sunday it's a weird day, but we got to do it. We got to do it. JB said, that's why I said my respect for him has grown. Yeah, I mean, like, until, and I said it before, until I see these people out there organizing and doing those same things, I don't even want to hear it. Half these people that talk online, I'll never see them out in the street. I'll never see them out there organizing. They just be talking. So stop. Okay. We got one more story. We got one more story, and then we'll go to the super chats. Okay. I'm so sorry, you guys. I still have this cold. All right. This Nick Fuentes versus Dan Bilzerian thing is weird on a number of levels. So for those who are not aware, Dan Bilzerian, he's a prominent influencer. He announced that he is running against Randy Fine for Congress. This was just recent. I found that kind of interesting because Randy Fine already had a challenger. Aaron Baker is running against Randy Fine. He's been on a number of shows and he's been out there campaigning for months. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Dan Bilzerian announces that he's running last minute. That just seemed weird to me. And part of me is wondering, like, is that for some type of notoriety? Is it for ego? Is it to sabotage? I don't know. But Nick Fuentes is speaking out against it. And apparently this went from one thing to another, and it eventually got to the point where Nick Fuentes says that Dan Bilzerian wanted to assassinate people in support of Israel. So let's get into this vid here.
I'm going to run against Randy Fine. Dude, it's everybody that lives in your district is an old boomer evangelical. It just doesn't even make any sense. So, no. There are now two tracks diverged, and honestly, it's a good thing. Honestly, it's a good thing. Let that be a magnet for every dummy. Let that be a magnet for every dummy, every numbnuts, every low IQ person, everybody that just wants to do something. Let that be a magnet for all of the refuse and the lumpen. And let this be a magnet for the elite human capital, for people that want to think deeply about these problems. You don't even have to agree with me necessarily, but we do need to be on the same page that we're going to need a big picture. We're going to need a big idea. We're going to need a better mental model of the world than whatever is going on that side. Okay. So it's fine. So honestly, it's fine. And that's the big idea. That's been the big idea. I've been saying it for a long time. I said it in 2024. I said, we got to go against Trump. Nobody wanted to go there. They were too late. And now here I am saying the same thing. I'm like, we got to up the ante. We got to go Democrat. We got to break the mold, break that.
So I don't know if everybody knows this, but Nick Fuentes has now been telling people that they have to support the Democratic Party because you have to make the Republican Party feel the pain for Trump not fulfilling his campaign promises. So he's now on this train now. He's now on that train that you got to support the Democratic Party.
That taboo, we got to do it just once. And once again, people are saying, oh, it's too far. Oh, it's too complicated. Oh, I don't get it. So, but here's the thing. I let the predictions do the talking. I'm not going to argue anymore. I'm not going to make the case anymore. I've made the case. And here's the good thing about this show. I always have my record. So you do your thing and I'll do mine. You do your whatever that is. I'll do my thing. Let's just go our separate ways and let's just see what happens. let's just see where we are in a couple of years. That's all I'm going to say. Let's just see what happens in 2028. And if you're confident, then you got nothing to worry about. That's the difference. I always put my money where my mouth is. I always go all in, and I am always vindicated. Always. Every single time. So I'm done. No more pearls before swine. I'm trying to explain this to somebody that doesn't know their ass from a hole in the ground. Let's just see what happens. Let's just see where we are in a couple of years. People say, you think this mythical dark horse is going to run and blah, blah. Let's just see what happens. Okay? Let's just see what happens. You and what army? You and what army of OnlyFans thoughts? That's the difference. I'm still people can say they're the movement. People can say whatever they want. This is still the only movement. Always has been, is, always will be. This is the America First movement. Everybody knows that. You have no army. You have nothing.
So some people saw this and they said that, well, Nick Fuentes is trying to hurt Dan's campaign, hurt his race here by putting this out. And people are saying that, he could be trying to intentionally help keep Randy Fine in office, which wouldn't make sense if you compare it to what Nick Fuentes has, complained about and said he believed all these years. But then it went further. He went on to make this accusation. This is hilarious. The first time I met Dan Bilzerian at his house, he had us put our phones in another room. Then asked me how difficult it would be to assassinate Israeli government ministers. Then he invited me to Dubai and Qatar, which I declined. On his way there, he was ambushed by the FBI. So this is kind of what sent people into a frizzy, where Nick Fuentes here said that Dan Bilzerian was asking how to assassinate Israeli government ministers. Now, I think you know where it's going to go from here, right? Of course, Dan is going to respond, but first, Lucas Gage responds and says, holy fuck, Nick, I swear to God, he did the same thing to me. He walked me and Jake up to that room with a batting cage. We put our phones on the couch and went up to that secluded room with the big TVs. He asked me about where Ben Shapiro lived and how he could be taken out. And so this is where we're at now, guys. Some people are saying that Nick Fuentes was doing this again to try to hurt Dan's campaign and therefore keeping Randy Fine in there. But I just want to remind everybody once again, there was already someone running against Randy Fine. His name is Aaron Baker, and he's been campaigning for months. So I had my own questions. Why did Dan Bilzerian enter this race last minute like that when Randy Fine already had a challenger? So let's get to Dan's response. I think Nick Fuentes is a Fed. Constant division, endless fighting, defending Epstein, then attacking a Christian man only to endorse a Jewish Democrat woman after saying the left wants us dead. The contradictions never end. So Dan believes that Nick is a Fed. It's funny. People were saying in the chat, they think both of them are actual feds. So, sorry. This Dan guy is wild. I don't know if you guys have seen him before. Again, he was a big influencer, but it's wild. So then let's get into the thick of it, because he also says Dan also says that he doesn't, I guess, trust Dave Smith either. So he says here, responding to Nick, you're just making shit up. And he shared this image here of Nick Fuentes saying, go vote for Laura Loomer today. Now, this was posted August 23rd of 2022. This looks like it's from Telegram. And it's a picture of Nick Fuentes and Laura Loomer. And he said, he shared this, I guess, as a way to get back at Nick and say, dude, you were telling people to vote for Laura Loomer. It goes on to say here, did you or did you not get ambushed by the FBI on the tarmac when you fled to Corsica, Dubai, and Qatar to discuss citizenship with government ministers in late 2024? Dan goes on to say, this is another lie. They gave me a subpoena when I was refueling my plane to testify against my dad, to which I pled the fifth. I wasn't fleeing anywhere. I went to Corsica to free dive, and I met with no government ministers. Nice try, Fed. So he's still calling him a Fed again. Nick says, interesting timing for a spontaneous trip to the Gulf to discuss golden citizenship with the Emiratis and Qataris, just as your daddy was being indicted by the DOJ for concealing money in a shell core that your name is on. Triple citizen. This is wild, man. Dan says there is no golden citizenship. It's a golden visa, retard. Free diving isn't scuba, and my name isn't on the shell core. You're really scrambling with these lies, but the truth is you are a gay Mexican kid LARPing as a white Christian, sabotaging anyone trying to do anything positive. So Nick goes, so you fled to free dive on your way to get your golden visa from the government, and the government in the UAE and Qatar the same week that daddy was indicted by the FBI, and on your way, the FBI served you a subpoena on the tarmac for the company you are a CEO of, but your daddy controls. This is insane, and it finally comes to a halt here. Taking a vacation and returning isn't fleeing, you idiot. I didn't get a golden visa, and I wasn't the CEO at the time, and I'm not the CEO now, but keep lying and deflecting from the fact that you're a Fed that, you guys can see here, sleeps with dudes, basically, is what he's saying. And he says, so you went from you're just making it up to I wasn't fleeing. It was all a huge coincidence, and I didn't get ambushed. I was subpoenaed, and I was in the UAE for a golden visa, but I didn't get it, and I wasn't on a shell core, but I was CEO, but not at the time. Triple citizen. This is wild, man. So, and then this guy, Hassan, he comes in and says, I was at Dan Bilzerian's house the day Nick Fuentes visited Dan. Below is a short video I took that day. The accusations Nick made about Dan are utter and complete lies and only further prove the concerns Dan has about him. I was there the whole time, from before Nick came until after he left, and what Nick claims is nothing but ridiculous BS. No doubt Dan's campaign for Congress is enraging the right people, and they are getting desperate. So here's the video that he's sharing. I'll do it like this because it goes pretty quickly. So that looks like that's Myron Gaines. That's Nick Fuentes right there. Let me see. Yeah, right there. But remember what he said about the cell phones? Hold on. I'm going to show you here. Isn't that a cell phone? And isn't this a cell phone? That looks like that's a cell phone in Myron's hand. But Nick Fuentes said that they didn't have the cell phones. He told them to get rid of their cell phones. So I think that's what he's trying to show in this picture. So interesting. Hassan said, this is a photo of the vacation Dan and Jake Shields and I went on to France, Romania, and Dubai. It's the same trip Nick Fuentes accused Dan went on to flee. Here we are free diving with the world record holder for free diving. So he has a picture of the diving that happened. So it turns out, it looks like Dan did go free diving. Yes, Pinky, he said Dan collected their phones, right? But in that video, you can see they have phones. So I don't know. And then, here, I want you to hear what he says here, because he's really getting on the Democrat thing now. So I guess this is his new pivot. Listen.
Here we are at the midpoint in this presidential term. That is how it has gone. What exactly are we supposed to do? Vote Republican harder, vote Republican more? Why would we? And hey, there's only two parties. So what are we supposed to do? Stay home? What I am doing in this election is voting Democrat. I'm telling other people to vote Democrat, and I'm not liberal. I'm not progressive. I'm not left wing in any way, as you know. Democrats have literally condemned me on the Senate floor. Democrats in the House Select Committee subpoenaed me and deposed me and froze my money and put me on the no-fly list. So I don't love the Democratic Party, and I'm not left-wing at all. And I wouldn't even call myself a liberal. I'm illiberal. I'm a reactionary. But partisanship is not a permanent part of your identity.
So he's jumping on the Democrat plane now. He's jumping on that train now. I guess that's going to be his new road. And some people are saying that maybe that's why he's trying to hurt Dan's campaign. So here's my take on all this, and I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I think all of this is weird to me. All of this is suspicious. It did not make sense for Dan to jump into this race when there was already someone who was campaigning heavily on the ground, who was preparing for this, and that was Aaron Baker to go against Randy Fine. To me, it did not make sense. I questioned that, and I said it at the time it was announced. I also question this sudden pivot of Nick Fuentes. I mean, he's telling you that he's not a Democrat, he's not a liberal, but he's saying he wants to support the Democrats to basically punish like Donald Trump and the Republican Party. I think Nick Fuentes is just outraged at this point. I think, again, like I said, I think he reminds me a little bit of Howard Stern. I see him more as a shock jock. He says things that get shocking attention, things that are going to shock you, right? That's how I kind of see him. And what's funny to me is that some of the same people, because wait for it now, if he stands by that, some of the same people that were saying don't, align or work with Marjorie Taylor Greene, watch some of those same podcasters. If Nick Fuentes sticks by this, watch some of those same podcasters welcome Nick Fuentes with open arms. Watch. Because they'll say, oh, well, he'll bring more money over my way. He'll bring more subscribers over my way. Watch they be willing to welcome Nick Fuentes with open arms. I'm calling it now. I'm calling it. But everybody ain't falling for it. This guy, I've been a groyper since 2017, and honestly, Dan Bilzerian convinced me to finally leave this disgusting cult. I will be volunteering for his campaign. We have to focus on winning instead of complaining online. So this guy who uses Nick Fuentes' photo in his own, see, this is what I'm talking about when I said cult of personality in the other story. People using other people's pictures, man, to represent their own accounts, man. This is where we're at now. Like, you got people that are willing to, like, they don't even want to be themselves. They've made someone else's identity their own identity. This shit is wild. We'll see what happens. I think someone might have been right. Someone said this a while back, and they said, I think both of them are feds. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it's very weird to me. Very weird. And people were talking about, what to question and what not to question. It seems like to me, like Nick Fuentes is crashing and burning, and he's jumping on the next big ride, which is or I'm going to go support the Democratic Party now because Trump was so bad. I think that's really all this is. As for Dan trying to or wanting to assassinate people, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know Dan. Never met Dan. But what I've seen, Dan seemed kind of loony too. So they both deserve each other. That's kind of how I see it. All right. Oh, Eric is here. Okay. Eric is going to close out the show.
Yes. I was doing a Mother's Day thing.
Yeah.
Seeing mom and my sister. I told my sister about the show. About this show.
Oh yeah.
And 11 demands and stuff. So we'll see. Maybe you'll get another viewer or two there. But oh man,
boy.
fed, huh?
That was just so wild, man. That was absolutely wild.
So how many of these comments have you read in our queue?
I read the ones that are not there.
Okay, so you cleared the ones you read?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right, and I can take it from here.
Yeah. Okay. We got a lot during the AOC Marjorie Taylor Greene story, but yeah. All righty.
All right.
That's it for me, guys. Guys, please have a happy Mother's Day evening.
To all the moms.
To all the mommies. And I will see you guys Tuesday. Bye.
All right, cool. All right, we're going to let our Sabrina go on with her Sunday here. I was out spending some time with the relatives, with mom and whatnot. And the subject of politics and what do we do about this mess kind of came up, and I was talking about it with my sister and showed her the show and the old 11 demands. And in fact, here I'll bring it up here in case there's anybody new here, anybody else new maybe watching who's wondering, what's all this 11 demand stuff about. We have, as it's something we talk about a lot on the show, the 11 Demands Project, and the baseline concept is to be starting with demands if we're going to have any kind of real change, any kind of real movement. And the central concept is this thing, we need a mass movement, but it needs to be based on those clear demands, and it needs to have a strong focus on corruption. And one of the things you find when you talk to people who are really not tuned into politics, maybe the same way that kind of politics weirdos like us who watch the show and are into this stuff, when they definitely, most people disconnect, right? Most people just don't even think that much about politics or talk that much about it. They just find it distasteful and annoying, and for good reason. And that's not really by accident. That's how they make the system work, so that it's that people just don't want to deal with it and just don't want that kind of headache. Part of our challenge is to say what can be done about it. What's our message? What's our theory of change? How do we fix up this mess? And so it's the reason why I always bring it back to the corruption, to those two sets of interests, about the billionaires and the rest of us. So if you ask people, even who aren't into politics, who don't follow this stuff or whatnot, you ask them, well, do you think our government is corrupt? And they say, well, they laugh, right? And they say, well, of course it is. Right? You ask them, well, do you think the billionaires are getting all the money and running off, laughing all the way to the bank and essentially, stealing all the money from us, and then they're running the show, and people will laugh again. They'll say, yeah, of course. I mean, the billionaires have all the money and whatnot. So then what we're trying to get to with 11 demands is to say, well, then shouldn't we do something about that? Shouldn't we be bringing it back to those core issues? So is the core issue of the core demands, and is that core issue of the corruption? It needs to be an organized effort of us getting, literally into the streets peacefully, but demanding clear things, clear change, and end to the corruption. So that's what 11 Demands is all about. The other thing I always like to highlight, and I mentioned this to my sister too, is there's also the 11 Demand Substack. So if it looks good and you want to dig a little deeper into various parts of it, the 11 Demand Substack has various pretty short articles. I think they're pretty short and punchy, but get to the point. Things like, how do these two sets of interests work? Forget left versus right. It's up versus down. Starting with demands. MCDS is always a good one, that framework of the MCDS. Even a bit on taxpayer dollars. And these are the highlighted articles, and there's actually more on that old 11 Demand Substack. So if I would say a call to action for people who do like the sound of this is make sure you're subscribed to the Substack, because that helps, that the more that we are working on things and trying to get the word out, and I think we're going to try to be working on things like panels and forums. Maybe even someday an in-person event would be kind of cool, but we'll have to see where we get to. You'll be hearing about those things on the Substack. You want to be subscribed to that one. You want to be subscribed to goes to the Sabby Substack, and we don't pummel you with a lot of traffic, but it does help because that we know people are receiving the message, and it's and you'll see in your email box new articles. All right, that's the old 11 Demands. Easy to find. You just search up 11 Demands. It's 11demands.org. Meanwhile, here on the Sabby Show, we're going to see what we got in the queues, because we got some super chats built up. I think there's been a couple things that maybe came through on the Rumble that I'll make sure to hit. I see one out there anyways. But let's start with the YouTube chat, and some of these will go back to the earlier stories. Thanks for the super chat, RNR TV, who says, hi Sabby, I hope all is well. There are some mistakes in your reporting in Mali. I tried to contact you to bring on Android TV. He's on YouTube and an AES journalist. I sent you some emails, but no luck. All right, we'll try to make note of that. You can also on Tuesday we'll probably finally do another of the Zoom Hangout call-ins where people can jump on there and also talk to Sabrina. So that can also be a good way if you're trying to get her attention about something. But yeah, she does try to keep up with the emails, but it's been very busy. But we'll try to make note of that one. Thanks for the super chat. And thanks for Chip Walter here. Thanks for the super chat. Going to the all caps. AOC don't want to align with white supremacists, yet she campaigned for genocide. Joe, who said, I don't want my kids growing up in a racial jungle. Yeah, I mean, with AOC, it's really not hard to find the contradictions. And that's because, she's not a principled person. She's about herself. She's about working her position, in that uniparty to get ahead. And I think basically where we've landed on this show is that if someone really is for the working people, for the 99%, not for the billionaires, step one, the way they can show us that is to leave the uniparty, leave the Democratic Party, leave the Republican Party. Go independent, start something new, just be independent, but organize around base principles, organize around key demands, I think is a good way to go, obviously, is what I'd say. And they can show us that. When they're not doing that, it's very, what's the word for it? It's very telling when they're not doing that. And thanks for this one from RTR, who's also saying, please let me know how I can reach out to bring Android TV for reporting on the AES News. He has a lot of information you'll be interested in. All right, we will make note of that. Shout out to Cheetah065 for being a member for 18 months. And they use their special longtime member chat to say, to note the hypocrisy of AOC. Got it. And from Mr. Marlon Wells, thanks for this one, saying AOC is trying to keep her APAC funds up. And even if, I know these so-called progressive Democrats, I like to call them faux-progressives, meaning fake progressives. Even they like to brag that they don't take corporate funds, they don't take money from AIPAC. But what they're doing is they're in a system that does. They're in a system that is neck deep in that corruption. You can't be a member of a party that is deeply complicit in genocide and not be corrupt, not be partly responsible for that genocide. It really just comes down to that. So they like to play this game where they say, "Oh, we don't take money from AIPAC. See, it's not on the sheet," but they're still benefiting from that party. They're benefiting from that whole moneyed system. Anyone who's a member of Congress who's not calling out the whole corruption, not calling out party leadership, is complicit. You're either calling out the problem or you're part of the problem. I think that's why we, are just so reflexively oppositional to people who are members, to politicians who are members of the Uniparty. It's not that hard for them to. It would be hard. Fine, it would be hard. It would be a difficult thing politically to leave the Uniparty, to leave the Democratic or Republican Party. As just a matter of operating, it's doable, right? It's not like there's some wall or something stopping them. Any of these politicians could announce tomorrow they're not a member of the party anymore. They've done it. You've seen politicians leave their parties. Unfortunately, when we've seen that, it's more often than not they're leaving it to move to the right of the party. You saw that with Kirsten Sinema. We need some real political courage from our elected representatives. And if the ones that are in there aren't willing and ready to do it, we need to elect new ones who are. Thanks for this one, Saucy Spice, who says, AOC is a political realist and she knows not to upset her donors. There is money in decrying anti-Semitism and not in decrying anti-blackness. Yeah, that's the thing. They stay on script and the system rewards them. We need a new system. We need to fix this system. Thanks for the super chat, Libertarian Social Democrat. Sabby, I've been saying this reparations won't be passed with the left. Making some alliances with the right, with FBA and heritage whites for U.S. first. Personally, I would say reparations aren't going to get anywhere as long as you have a corrupt system that's run by the billionaires, because the billionaires aren't interested in reparations. The billionaires just see reparations as money out of their pocket. So as long as our government works for the billionaires, you're not going to see much on that front. It's why it is part of 11 demands. It's right up there on racial and criminal justice reform, is that there needs to be real reparations that are done treated as a debt owed. There are ways to do it, but it's a matter of political will. It's a matter of moving beyond the corrupt system. I see it as of a piece, put it that way. If you want things like reparations and other good things, right? We can all have nice things. If we cut the puppet strings from the billionaires running our government, we need a government that represents us, and then we'll be able to start having some nice things. Thanks. Shout out to Amber for the super chat saying, Sabby winning the gold in the Go Off Olympics. Yes, I was listening in while I was driving home, having Sabrina go off. And thanks for the super chat, Saucy Spice, who says, Norman Finkelstein doesn't like Mehdi Hassan because he helped sabotage anti-Zionist politician from Labour Party a long time ago. All right. If you want the I don't know if you call it the dirt, but the past things on Mehdi Hassan. If you can find what Max Blumenthal has talked about with Mehdi Hassan, or if you ever hear Max, or if you can ask him about Mehdi Hassan, he'll tell you about Mehdi's history of really just being that, I hate to use the word grifter because it's overused, but it fits. If you look up Mehdi Hassan's past, you'll see that the word grifter fits in his case, certainly. Thanks for this one from Ray. It says, AOC is too calculating and it shows. Thanks for that. Thanks for this one. Also, Libertarian Social Democrat. Ilhan Omar, of all people, is willing to work with MTG. There you go. And, it's a game to them. They want to have these little battles, and as long as the subject and the demand in these little battles doesn't hurt the billionaires, doesn't hurt the mega corporations, doesn't really threaten the system, as long as it's a battle that's down over here playing and not up there threatening the system, they're not only good with it. The system encourages those kind of fights. It's how you keep this political corrupt corporate system going. This corporate oligarchy is you actually encourage these fights, red and blue fights, that are really the peasants fighting each other, infighting. You encourage that kind of fighting, and because then the people never get to the real fight of up versus down, the top 0.1% versus the rest of us. Our challenge is to, talk about and look at these fake fights, but call them out as the fake fights, and then go from there into what are the real demands, the MCDS, money, corruption, demand solutions, call out the corruption, of course the money, have clear demands, and when you have clear demands, you're gonna see, here are these solutions, if they're good demands. And a good shout out to LCV 419 being a member for a month. We like our members. And I would say, being a member on YouTube is cool. And if you really want to be a super supporter of Sabrina, the best way we would recommend also is to sign up to the Patreon. And there are different Patreon levels. You can go for $1 a month. You can go $5. You can go a little more a month if you have that much. And it does that helps the show because it's sustainable, income coming into the show. So if you like what Sabby's doing, check out Patreon. If you look at the bottom of this video on YouTube or any video, there's a link there to the Patreon for the Sabby Sab show. And we definitely also, encourage people to check that out. And Kenman says, I remember when AOC went to the Met Gala. Yep, we do. Thanks for that one. Thanks for the super chat, Anthony, who says MTG better than AOC because evolution over time, indie. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly refreshing and interesting to hear some of the things that MTG is saying. I frankly would have preferred and think it would have been more productive, more helpful to a real movement for the working class, for the 99%, if MTG had stayed in Congress but left the Republican Party and left both parties and had been an independent. If AOC were a non-uniparty, non-aligned, no party preference member of Congress right now and was still in there and was saying these things and shouting out the corruption, she could have been standing on the House floor saying these things. That would be powerful. So I guess I kind of wish, I definitely, would rather she had done that. Instead, it seems like she left Congress and left her power behind, but is still staying in the Republican Party. So, I mean, there are some good things, some gains there, and we'll certainly talk about what she's saying and react to it. But I feel like our position as a movement is, yes, and, what we need more, and we're demanding more. But I mean, now that she's left, Congress, she's, basically a pundit. kind of like the rest of us, out there, a talking head, which is fine. But it'd really be nice to have some independent people who are not members of the Uniparty get elected, even a few of them. There are ones out there running. There are the ones that we had a little while ago, the 11 Demands Candidate Forum, where we had Andy Aguilar running, I think it was North Carolina. You had Andy Ellis running for governor in Maryland, and you had Justin Phillip running out in Oregon, and you had Jose Vega running for Richie Torres' seat in New York. If we want to have a vote, right, where people, are talking about voting doesn't help, voting isn't working, it isn't working while you're voting for the Uniparty, but there are things you can vote for that can help, that can be good votes. Things, there are ballot initiatives that are out there that are, some are good, some are bad. Vote for those, or even against ones that are bad. That's a good vote. It's democracy. We need real democracy. There are candidates like the ones who are in the forum, like there are other Green and Indie candidates that are worth our votes, I would say, and our time and our support. So, there are things we can be doing, even, these little things. But it needs to be of a piece. What we're trying to do with 11 Demands is bring it all together, organized by that clear set of demands. Thanks for this super chat. This is thanks. Shout out to One Box of One, One Box One of One, for being a member for 30 months. Shout out there. We use their special chat to say the Democrats politicians also went to Israel with the Republicans. We have to process that beyond what has been said about the reasons they went. And, I would say it's of a piece of the corrupt system. I would call it Israel as an effect, not so much as a cause of the issues. I know it feels like Israel's running everything, but I would say it's the billionaires running everything. Israel is a billionaire pet project. If you look on the 11 Demands Substack, there's an article called "The Billionaire Pet Project" that talks about this. Where, yes, we should be calling out Israel and Israel's influence in AIPAC, but it's not an isolated thing. It's Israel only has this kind of power and influence because of the billionaires, because there are certain Zionist billionaires that support Israel in a big way. And that goes back a long ways. If you somehow have a magic wand and didn't have Israel's influence, you could wave a magic wand and they no longer have political influence in our system. We still have a thoroughly corrupt, messed up system. If we can do something, get organized, and lessen the billionaires' influence on our system and make the system work for the 99%, then you really start getting at a system that's getting fixed and that starts working, that can not only fix what's happening with Israel's influence and the Zionists and the genocide in Gaza, but you fix a whole slew of problems that grow out of that corruption. The whole Ukraine-Russia war is about corruption. The reason that's happening is it's money for that military-industrial complex, for the war billionaires. There's a whole slew of issues, with technology, with AI, with jobs, with the way the big corporations work. That it just needs a lot of work, but it needs to fix the corruption. We have to go all the way to the top, to connect the dots, recognize it, and demand a better system. Thanks to Libertarian Social Democrat for this super chat as well, who says, Killer Mike needs to challenge Warnock in 2028. Before that, maybe, if he did it as an independent. And if he had good policies and demands, we'd have to see his policies. Thanks for the super chat, Calvin Dixon, who says, love your video on Oprah and what she did to Michael Jackson. What's crazy is she will never apologize to the Jackson family. She all about the money. Yep, I think that's in line with what Sabrina said and what we feel around here. And thanks also for this one, Libertarian Social Democrat saying, Aaron told me Dan is sabotaging and not cooperating. All right. And thanks for this one from SBZP with a super chat who says, I'm going to say it. DSA and PSL types have serious racial problems against blacks and Arabs. Just look at comments at the Bad Faith interview with Butch Ware. Yeah, I mean, it's there's definitely issues there. I guess we'll put it that way. And I think Sabrina covered it pretty well. And one more super chat here from Libertarian Social Democrat who says, Hassan Shibli has a shady past. Look him up. Thanks for that. I hear you. And then I just need to shift a couple things around here just so I can bring up this chat on Rumble. Because we do like to also give some attention to our Rumble peeps. How's everything going on Rumble? All right, good. And sorry, I just got to click the right things here. Before we call it a Sunday for Mother's Day. And of course, a big shout out to all the mothers out there. And I hope everyone and them had a good Mother's Day. Meanwhile, on Rumble, thanks much to Goo81, a regular out there on Rumbles. Thanks for this paid Rumble rant. He says, Luke Gage is also being called a psyop and appeared on CNN to smear Dan and Jake Shields. Yeah, I mean, you got to. It's always an interesting question of how much, when it comes to these things, are people actually fed? Are they actually paid? I tend to be kind of two minds on some of these things. It's it can be a little too quick and easy to call someone out as a fed and whatnot, and it's hard to know. There's certainly stuff going on. On the plus side, there are big time moneyed interests, both in you got the whole Homeland Security, the whole what do you call it? Security, industrial complex. You got these massive departments in the government that have tons of money and they have budgets. You have FBI, CIA. There are documented cases in the past of these agencies going after MLK, going after other leftists, and a lot of shenanigans going around. So it's certainly possible that there are budgets for things to have people, handlers, who knows what, going in, just trying to make sure that there's not an organized leftist movement rising. I mean, that can certainly be a thing out there. At the same time, a lot of the times this stuff is really just chaos, and it's really just people infighting and whatnot. So it could be a lot of one or the other. It could be a mix. In any case, like for what we do about it, and I'll close with this, I would say, and I think on this show, the best, we'd say the best course here is to have a clear set of principles, a clear set of demands as your guide, as kind of the central thing to what we're doing. And that's what 11 Demands attempts to do, and to be focused on that corruption and on that kind of that guiding concept, the principle. It's the idea that it's that top 1% versus the rest of us. I believe if we keep coming back to that, if we always center on that, and then kind of go from there again, or work from there, that we can get some stuff done and stay on track, and not be overly distracted by these other fights. So I say, look at all this stuff, analyze it, cover it, talk about it, but then always come back to what's happening, what's central. What's central is corruption from the top 0.1%, the billionaires corrupting, running our government. We need to fix that. We need to get organized as a movement, saying, no to that corruption. We're not going to put up with it. We're not going to vote for it anymore, and we're going to demand better. So that's the fight. That's the challenge. We're going to keep working on it here and talking about it. And I hope you all keep watching. I appreciate everyone for watching and their kind comments. And until next time, which should be this is Sunday, so our next live show should be Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time here on this channel and on Rumble and even on Twitter. You can catch this live stream. So I hope to see you all then. Thanks for watching. I'll go out with what Sabby usually says. Have a good night. Keep up that fight, and we'll see you next time. Thanks all, and peace.